Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Karl Meyer. I'm the marketing director for Vigil, or Advanced Aerospace Design, who makes the Vigil AAD. This presentation is nothing groundbreaking or new. It's more a bit of like a confirmation of knowledge, or for those of you who don't quite know how AADs work and how they measure, and how the process of its function during the course of a skydive. We'll go through that. So it's like how it works with its turbulence and air pressure, and how it like functions kind of on that way. Let's keep questions towards the end. We'll do a Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions, kind of try to remember what they are. I'll hand a mic out, get everybody to like ask the questions and things like that. And like I said, this is really just it's more of a confirmation knowledge, just give you a bit of insight how the AADs work, especially ours, because I work for them. And we'll go from there. Cool. So our singular purpose at our company is to ensure that we help you all this step of the way. You know, like it's designed to save lives. Every single one of our life saves. We've got 582 of them right now over the last 20 years. Without the interdiction of the Vigil AAD, the preservation of life wouldn't have existed. So that's our primary function, is to save lives. I think in the UK now they're mandatory, correct? Yeah. Cool. So how AADs work? Air pressure. Everybody knows. If you want to get some science, I'm sure there's some science people here. You know, air pressure is measured in hectopascals, millibars, or inches of mercury. Everybody's had that feeling before, like when the clouds come in, you can feel the density, altitude, or if you climb a mountain, you get wheezy. You know? So imagine we have an air pressure here of 1,013 hectopascals. You know? If we go higher, the air pressure will become lower, and therefore you'll have a different reading. So like over here, if we measure air pressure of 1,650 or 500 feet above this place, the air pressure will be 950 hectopascals. That's kind of like the science side of it. So that's what our device does. AADs purely work on measuring density, air pressure. It doesn't use it. Air pressure converts it to time and speed. There we go. We have two parameters, time and speed. So we'll take that altitude or that air pressure, and from there it figures out what your altitude is, and then based on how fast your altitude is changing, it has a time component coded into it. Our AAD, when you turn it on, all AADs take a measurement every 32 seconds. So it's constantly checking whether or not your density altitude has changed, air pressure. Once it becomes airborne, in other words, once you've taken off, it'll calculate every eighth of a second. So about 8 times a second is doing a calculation the whole time. So as you're climbing up the airplane, as well as when you're in free fall. Between the current and the last measurement, I'm just doing that. So if one measurement, like you see, is at 2,000 meters, and the next measurement is at 1950, it means you're falling at a descent rate of 50 meters per second. Does that make sense? Or you could be climbing 50 meters per second. Okay. So this is what a normal skydive looks like. Our device allows us to download graphs. It keeps the last 16 minutes or 16 free falls, depending which comes first on our devices. So as you can see, you see the little dot on the little green line. Green line is going to be your altitude, and then the little red line over here is going to be your speed, and then you see the squiggly red line is basically you increasing and accelerating and decelerating as you go. And you can see the major spike under the word skydive that says somebody's canopy is deployed, because normally what happens when people go to pull, you actually accelerate because you pitch a little head and sometimes a little nose down, where you make your body a little smaller. And then you can see the canopy right all the way down there. So as you can see, it is using time, the speed and time and altitude. And as you can see, all those little spikes over there is your burble measuring on your back. Now, if we're just doing a normal skydive, like most of us are doing, rigs on your back, AAD sits on your back, and that's the most turbulent area. So there's a constant low pressure. So the device is reading constantly as you just move yourself a little bit, move forward, move backwards. Air pressure is changing. So that's why there's not a constant line on your air pressure reading. And that's the turbulence. And this is going to come into play a little further. I'll explain some stuff for you. Does that all make sense? So there's a low pressure on your back where the AAD is installed. There's a different air pressure to the rest of your body around you, in the better position. If you're lying on your back, you'd almost be in a constant air pressure because there's no burble or there's no turbulence. So belly to earth versus back to earth, the device reads slightly differently. Okay. Our device has an offset to calculate the difference of what we believe is a measured load pressure on your back. If you're lying this way, it's got a constant pressure. It reads almost accurately. This way, we've calculated to read into plus minus 220 feet. So if we look at a freestyle graph, so here's a jumper doing a freestyle jump. If everybody's seen freestyle before, spins, loops, back rolls, somersaults, stuff like that. As you can see, look at the pressure variation in the person's jump. So the burble is constantly changing as they're rotating their body. Okay. So that's a Vigil AAD reading. And as you can see, it's doing this calculation. If you look at the time over here, it's a lot of time calculation going along and all the way through the canopy deployed over here. And then there's just the gradual canopy descent. Every one of those points is a measurement. Remember I told you that AAD is going to be measuring the turbulence all the time. So if we look at every single one of these points over here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's one of those measurements every eighth of a second is happening all along the way here. Obviously, most AADs nowadays have more than one programmable mode. Some are single purpose, some are multiple purpose. Ours obviously multiple purpose. Just to give you some idea of altitudes, if in our student mode, 1,300 feet, pro mode 1,100, 10 and 23, extreme 1,100. That is the highest the AAD will fire. And that's if you were on your back in a high pressure zone. So if you're unconscious lying on your back in the pro mode, the Vigil AAD will fire at 1,100 feet. If you're on your belly and it's reading the burble, which is a turbulence, that 1,100 feet can change by up to 200 feet. So you could be down closer to the 840. It'll always fire by 840. Yeah. So we tell people, make sure you have an open canopy and fully functioning by those red numbers over there. Because remember, even though you deployed a parachute, your AAD doesn't know that. And as you're transitioning, what's happening to the burble in your back? It's changing. So therefore, it's now reading a spike from a low pressure to a high pressure. So we tell people don't end up with two canopies out. Most people don't find themselves in this position, but every now and then we'll have somebody who'll have an AAD fire. They're like, well, my parachute was open. I pulled at 2,000 feet. Well, they forget at terminal velocity, the speed at which you're falling, the time it takes you to pull your parachute out, and then the time it takes your canopy to open. You burn through that 1,500 feet or 1,600 feet, which then puts you down closer to those things. Because remember, this thing only knows air pressure. It doesn't know that your intention. It doesn't know like, oh, Johnny threw out his parachute, let's stop working. Its sole purpose is to save your life. So when does a Vigil activate? So here's a good way to show you kind of like the spike. If we look at the little green line at the top there, you'll see the first little dot. That's its initiation of free fall. So you've left the airplane, it's gone, oh, hey, you're going into some free fall. There's a high acceleration as a person's maybe diving out the plane. Speed up, and then as you can see, they kind of like set themselves along a regular belly jump, doing nothing too crazy, probably an average skydiver. And then you'll see this is the activation zone. And at some point, you'll see that the deployment of the main canopy. He slows down, pitches, and then his speed slows down, and he's below the activation zone, and he flies his canopy. As you can see, that's the canopy deployment, and there's what we call a below activation speed. And when does it not activate? This is a really busy graph over here. But as you can see the exit, the free fall, and then obviously the person constantly is in a pretty rapid acceleration and stuff. But there's his activation zone, and his under canopy, his free fall speed is below the activation speed and altitude. So it's obviously not going to activate at that point. So that's the activation. Sorry, I apologize. Does that make? I mean, the graphs are like interesting to look at. The more you know them, the little easier they are to understand. The other question we get from a lot of people is like, how does the turbulence or the device work with regards to the cutaway? Same thing. Remember, even though you're under canopy, our device stays on until 150 feet. So if you do have a cutaway, as long as you accelerate to the activation speed of the device and you've met the parameter of the altitude, the device will still work. So if we look here, we see some of these, he's at 550, or he's at 540 feet or whatever, 840 feet on the canopy, is flying. All of a sudden, there's a massive spike in speed. That spike comes from what? Air pressure. And air pressure is that's what we're reading. And because every point is a readable point, as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And now if we look just above the red line in the activation, you can see 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 activation points. Our device needs 6 reference points above the activation speed if you're below the activation altitude to activate. Does that make sense? Remember, we've got to meet those two. So it is only, once again, taking that air pressure or turbulence and converting it into time and altitude. So as long as you meet the time and altitude parameters, the device will activate. So here's another one. As you can see, the activation, the firing parameters over here in speed. You see the jumpers free fall, and then you see the spike, and you'll see the 6, and you'll see where the blue dot is the activation. So that jumper was under canopy, then went back into free fall, accelerated fast enough to activate the device. Any questions? Think about questions. I'll come back to you. So this is my colleague's famous, there I was, thought I was going to die line. You go do a nice 4-way, you break off, you open your parachute, you're not having problems, you put your slide away, take your booties off, you look around, you're having a great time. Bang, you have a collision. You struggle to get out of the line to twist, you're kicking, screaming, you're like, oh, this is it. Mom's going to be real upset with me. Can't find your reserve angle because you've loosened your chest strap. And you're like, oh, I'm in trouble. And as long as you meet the expected free fall speed through the activation altitudes, the device will fire. So something like that will look, think about body position, all that stuff we've gone through, it'll look something like that in pro mode. So remember, it's just reading that burble, the effect of the burble on your body. We call it like the smartest dumb device. It really doesn't know what you're doing. It's just looking at data. It's just looking at the turbulence or the burble and its effect on you. Remember, every point is a measurement. So the purple blue dot is the activation. You can see it's met the parameters above the speed, and the device will activate. So in pro mode, the device needs to read 35 meters per second. There's just a zoom in of that. It's basically just zooming in on that the middle spike. We're just zooming in on that one for you guys over there. A lot of people ask us, well, what if I'm in a different mode? So obviously we'll take the extreme mode of ours, which is for the high performance canopy pilots. As you can see, they've only reached 1 point of that activation speed. Obviously, if we're in a tandem or student mode, the red line will be sitting in a different mode. It'll be a little further down because it has a lower free fall speed activation. The extreme is at 43 meters per second. Something to consider if you especially if you're either running a student operation or you're an experienced jumper, of the mode where you need to set the unit in. We see some drop zones put student gear into pro mode because they want to match the instructor, but then you're at a different free fall speed. So some things to consider when jumping. Just an example of all the different speeds at which you would have, how long it would take you to get back to your activation speed on a regular jumper. So if you're a student, it would take you about 2.5 seconds from 0 free fall speed to accelerate fast enough to activate your AAD. If you're in pro mode, 3.9 seconds. Extreme 43 or extreme 46, almost 5.5 seconds. It's almost 1,000 feet. Think about that. If you were in, well, subterminal is not 1,000 feet, it's less than that, but something to consider. Yeah. I'm going to show you a video quickly of a gentleman that had a cutaway, had a malfunction, cutaway, failed to find his handle. But because he was already under canopy, he had slowed down enough that when he cut away, he had to then re-accelerate back to AAD firing altitude. And then the video after that, we'll watch the whole skydive with an overlay of the actual graph reading of his activation. So this is just kind of like the small snippet, and then we'll watch the whole skydive, which is actually pretty interesting to watch. That one there. So just a regular Sunday for this gentleman. Obviously spends a little bit of time dealing with his malfunction. I think we're up to like 11 seconds now. Cuts away, no RSL. And as you can see, he's holding onto his chest strap right now. And his AD activates. Yeah, so it took him that long. He spent so much time working out the problem that he then had to accelerate down to activation speed before the device would fire. So he was still within the activation altitude parameters, but he was needing to accelerate to that speed. So remember, what does your thing need? 2 parameters, speed and altitude. Okay. And now we'll watch. This is a good one to watch. It's a little longer, but it's a whole skydive. We'll overlay the graph for you now, and you'll actually get to see how it works. Because who doesn't like to watch a really terrible sit fly skydive? I can turn the volume up if you'd like. It's really cool. So as you can see, the graph's just meandering along there. As you can see, the green lines, the skydive in time. As they transition, you'll see certain spikes. You saw how he brought his knees in. He got a little spike because he sped up a little bit. So this is what your AAD is doing on your back while you're skydiving, having fun, trying to geek the GoPro. It's working. Not a bad skydive. You can see that big spike in speed, obviously because he's backtracking, so it's pretty low, head low. Pitches. Spends a lot of time working it out. And we know how the rest goes. And then we go to this part. So now he's back into free fall on his back, and as you can see, he starts to accelerate. But he needs to hit those parameters above this red line, which was only then. So the activation took place. Actually, I can catch it for you. No, I don't want to watch all that again. So activation took place there. So you can see why we talk about the effects of your burble or turbulence on your back. So these devices only read one thing and convert that to those 2 things. So whether you're flying like this, or you're flying like that, or you've cut away, you have to meet that criteria. And those criteria do change a little bit for everybody. A gentleman like yourself or me, we're going to fall a little faster. We're going to have a bigger burble than, let's say, a smaller petite girl. So those burbles will be slightly different, but they're all within a couple of seconds of each other. Okay. Oh, get out of here. No. I think that's the end of the, I think that was the, oh yes it was. Oh, don't want to share it. There you go. Yeah, so that's the effect of the turbulence on your AAD, is that burble behind your back, and then how it pertains to how it reads yourself in free fall, especially during like cutaway situations. Yeah. Got a couple of minutes left. If there's any questions, if you've got a question, please grab the mic. I'll try and answer as best as possible, or I'll tell you some story.
Hello. So I'm interested, you're talking about relatively infrequent measurements, kind of 8 a second, presumably driven in large part by battery tech 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And battery tech is, like amazingly better now. I'm wondering if that story is changing.
Everything's in R&D, obviously, and like we're always trying to future-proof ourselves. Right now, where we are with our battery technology, our batteries are far greater than the consumption needed for the device right now. And obviously, we try and make it as simple as possible, but with the most technology base behind it. So the process is fairly simple. I think in time, if we look at where the sport's going with the type of harnesses and canopies people are flying, I think there's naturally going to be some kind of evolution in the sport. If you look at, like you say, like AADs themselves haven't changed much over many, many years. There's potential or possibility for AADs to maybe advance in the future. We don't know that yet. We've always got somebody in R&D doing something. Yeah.
Thank you.
Always. Anybody else? Just hand the mic over there and hand it on to you guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Is it possible to get these graphs ourselves from our own AADs, or would it have to be sent back to...
You can. So our device will, like I said, keep 16 minutes or 16 free falls, whichever comes first. You can buy an IR reader from us, and it's read through the controller. So the only complicated is to get the controller out of your rig to be able to read it. But yeah, you can actually download it yourself and look at it. Yeah. So and also, if you look at your AAD, especially if you jump a Vigil, at the end of the day, you can actually, or even after jump, if you press the little green button once, it'll show you some of the information from the last jump. So it'll tell you max speed, length of free fall. But that's just for that specific jump that just happened. But you can get these graphs off here. Whenever we have an activation, whether it's a lifesaver or an accidental activation, and we get the unit back in the shop, we always download the data and we'll share it with the rig or the end user. And we do the same for authorities when there's been other kind of incidents that they've asked us for data. We're happy to share it with people. Yeah.
You mentioned there was 6 data points needed. Are they sequential, or is it sort of 6 out of the last 10?
They have to be sequential. Yeah. So your fourth data point can drop below, and then it starts again. So it has to be 6 sequential data points for it to say, hey, let's go. Because there's that massive burble in your back, and sometimes if you're ebbing and flowing or your friend bumps into you, like you don't want to be like half on your back and it's spiking higher, and then it fires as you're rolling like back to your belly. I'm just using this as an example, but yeah, so it has to be 6 sequential points in a row for it to make that activation. Yeah.
We have one of your readers, thank you very much, and I share graphs with you all the time. Can you tell me, are there any plans to make it Mac friendly? Because I have to go somewhere else.
I feel your pain. I'm a Mac user, and every time they're like, hey, I'm like, I can't do that. I personally have spoken to the team about putting it cloud-based, a little easier to use. That way the software is easier to update from our side. You just plug it into USB. It doesn't matter what software you use. That's part of the future planning for that. It'll be just easier for everybody. Yeah. But, anything else? One in the back. One over there. You will go first, then we'll hand down the back. Yeah, it's coming to you.
So you said that the difference between back and belly can be up to 200 feet.
Yeah.
So what is your activation height synced to? Is that back or belly?
So it's synced to pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure and altitude, which is 840.
Yeah.
And then because you're falling on your belly and you have a low pressure.
So you're very likely to deploy like 200 feet lower.
No, that's why we have an algorithm dedicated to work within that. So it's looking at the spikes and realizing it's constantly in a low pressure. So more often than not, if you belly to earth, it's going to fire higher than 840.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah, because it's obviously the software is looking and going like, oh man, there's lots of jumping and spiking going around. Whereas if you're on your back and it knows like, hey man, that pressure's constant, it's going to be closer to 840.
Yeah. And like for example, if you would do transition from back to belly, would that influence the speed reading that much to have like?
Yes. Yeah. I don't I did a seminar last year about life saves, and we actually have a video of a gentleman that got to activation altitude and kept looking for his handle, and he kept doing loops, and the the graph did this all the time, and he fired like right on the money at 840, and it's about as scary as that one I just showed you. Yeah, so it will affect. Remember, it doesn't know what you do. It just has a pressure reading that's converted to time and altitude and speed. Yeah, so it does affect it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Gentleman in the back there.
Thanks. Just wondering if you've got any data comparing GPS speeds to the speeds the Vigil measures, because that's the only data source we have as skydivers to see if we're close to reaching those limits. So for when people know when to move up for extreme or when to turn it off completely.
Yeah, so GPS is using a satellite and using ground track. We're using air pressure, totally different readings. Yeah, the best thing to do is if you've done a specific jump, like I said, when you land, press the button once, it'll give you a max speed. And I think it's max speed and average speed of that jump. So
that's only for freefall, though. It's the canopy that people are concerned about.
Yeah, so the only real way you will know is to get like a data reader. We do that with some of our sponsored athletes that wear data readers, and we have some out at the moment to do some R&D. To reach the activation speed in extreme, which is 43 feet per second, remember it's got to be within a sustained 5-6 point data. So it's very rare people are going to get there because it's 100 and something miles an hour. So it's pretty fast. I'm not saying it's unobtainable, but people have obtained it. Yeah, I think like you were asking about like where's the sport future-proofing ourselves. I think that's the next step in the evolution of AADs is having to catch up to where rigs and canopies and harnesses have gone with regards to what's effectively a safe AAD for high-performance flying. You know, it has to come.
Yeah, it's just the current point where people jumping mutants and high-performance canopies, you have Peregrine Spectres, we just turn them off now.
Yeah,
and we prefer to have them on.
Yeah, I agree. And which is interesting. I was in South Africa at the World Cup last year, and I had a couple of jumpers come over and talk to me because they're all CP competitors around the world, but they're like, I like flying the mutant, so I take it on my AFF jumps, or I take it on my flocking jumps. But they said, but then I also want to have an AAD because it's not a swoop jump where I'm by myself. The chances of getting hit are slim, but they're still there, you know. So we've had lots of discussions with people about where the advancement of the type of skydiving people are going. If you think about, I've been jumping for 30-something years, and a 150 was considered an extreme canopy at that time. Nowadays, 150s are what people are jumping almost straight off student status. So we've juggernauted into the future with regards to the sport. I've been in the industry for a while. That there's always like a leapfrog effect. One person makes an advance, and everybody goes, "That's pretty cool." And then goes, "Oh, hang on, we got to chase that." So, R&D is ever going for sure, and we understand the plight of that for sure. Yeah. Boss is coming up here.
I'm going to sit right.
Boss is right in front of me. Anyway, any other questions?
When you said on your belly, you're going to fire around by 40. On your back, it's going to fire higher.
Is it?
Because you don't have the burble.
On your back, you don't have the burble, yeah. That's right, yeah. Any other questions? No one? Yeah. You use the mic just so they can record it on the video.
So the maximum speed reading you get at the end of the jump, is that like the maximum measured point, like one point, or is it average?
No, it'll be the fastest you did on that jump.
So that's going to be like not really correct.
Yeah, so if you're doing a bunch of like front flips and back flips, it's gonna give you a high max speed. If you're doing like a real like lazy belly fly, it's gonna have like a lower max speed. Yeah.
And that's also the case for the activation criterion. It just takes the highest point.
Well,
or is it like an average for between?
Well, it's got to get 6 data points that are above the activation speed and when you're within the activation altitude zone. Yeah. So it has to be 6 data points in a row. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Are you sure? Nothing? Oh, that went quick. Well, if there's not any questions, thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. If you've got any other questions, come and see us over here. We are today and tomorrow. Happy to help out with any questions you got about Vigils and AADs and how they function. If you need some help with like how they turn on and change modes, come find me, and we'll have a chat. Thank you very much, everybody.